Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Conversation Capital. Today we're chatting all things to do with being an actor or actress in the South African context and space. So all my entertainers, you're up. Thank you so much for all the love that you've been showing us on social media and on the YouTube page. Continue to like, subscribe, and most importantly, comment. Tell us who you want us to talk to and what you want us to talk about. As always, behind the mic, we've got our lovely voice of reason, Bonga. Hi, Bonga.
Hey.
How you doing? And then today we're joined by actress Sanelisiwe Jobodwana.
That's the one.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're
Thank
so
you for having
excited
me.
to have you. So, if you could give us just an, brief synopsis. Who is it that you are? What is it that you do?
So I'm Sanelisiwe Jobodwana, and I was born in Zambia, grew up between Australia and Johannesburg, and I went to AFTA, which is the Film and Television School or College of South Africa, and I have been dedicated to creating theatre and film and television for the past, I think, 15 years.
Sure, that's amazing. And you're saying you were born in Zambia, I'm assuming from exile parents,
Absolutely.
and then you bounced between Australia and here.
Yes.
Australia.
Should I put on an accent?
That's
All right.
yeah.
G'day, mate.
Oh,
You can't just have me here.
That's really good. So how long were you there for?
We were there, all in all, probably for 6 years.
Okay.
But then when we came back home, we landed in Orlando West,
Okay.
which was quite a
Paradigm
dynamic.
shift.
Yeah, But I think the thing which got me was our storytelling in South Africa. From the minute you landed, there were just stories, smallanyana tales, which were just coming from every which way. Whether it was the taxi driver, or whether it was the taxi marshal, or whether it was the pastor in the trains, which was, giving off his testimony, I just realized that I came from a very quiet country, and then coming into South Africa, you had stories that were just bouncing up and down.
I'm telling you, Shonda Rhimes would relish.
Oh, no. Listen.
No,
we've got
Sauda.
stories for days.
Sauda.
Forget.
Sauda really storyteller.
Forget.
But like you're saying, it's everything from the pastor on the corner of the street or in the train. I've got a Mamkulu. Her name is Mamkulu Matreni because she was born in a train.
Yeah.
wow.
Gigi Matreni, and they gave her the name Matreni.
I actually know of a matreni, but I've never put it like that.
No,
I've
what
never
is
thought about it
matreni?
like that. You know what's interesting? How when someone comes from a different context, they see what the country is. I would have never put it like that, like we're good storytellers. But now that she thinks about it, I realize it's my everyday life.
Yeah.
Like there's someone talking to me the whole way.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Oh yes, definitely.
And very descriptive.
Yes.
Yeah. I would also do that sometimes. I'll choose like a character when I'm in a taxi. Anyway,
But you have to, because if you're in a Soweto,
and Ifan.
you have to convert to a different character when you're in Joburg CBD, as opposed to when you are in the suburbs. Your accent changes, your body language changes, so you're always taking on these characters, whether you know it or you're
You
not,
know
for survival.
what? Now you don't even have to say whether you know it or not. When I moved to Johannesburg from the Val, I had to learn consciously Zulu
100%.
because if I got to the taxi rank and said dumela ba ke kopa taxi e yang Emarensia I'd be like mara manje baba ngicela taxi Emarensia when I say ngicela taxi Emarensia
Even your tone changes. It's not Baba Tele Taxi. It's
baba ngicela taxi
pub.
yes. Or they don't even look at you.
You were so how did I kill someone? But you're right. So just in South Africa, we're constantly learning and adapting, and I think it definitely is. Somehow, City of Lights, I don't know, maybe probably New York takes the cup for cities, grandiose cities. But Johannesburg has a buzz, man.
It does.
I'm a piano after all.
No.
On a more serious note, just chatting to you as an artist, as an actress in South Africa. I know you've done a lot of things, and I believe you were into also musical theatre.
Yes, at some point, yeah.
And so you do touch a bit on music and things like that. And I want to get into, a heavy topic. But just looking at the rate of suicide, recently we've had, artists that have taken their own, not even recently, but it's quite a growing and quite, I don't know whether we're being exposed to it and maybe people are being more honest to say, because, usually people wouldn't disclose cause of death. So it could just be the exposing of, or it could be that really this thing is growing, and we look at Patrick Shai, we look at the late Ricky Rick, I mean, WHP, it's heartbreaking, you know. And, do you think that being in the media space and artistry adds a certain layer that is more difficult than being a banker?
And especially because artists can never opt out. You know how we can take leave, or a doctor can say, I mean, even the same can be done on set.
Yeah.
You can bring in a sick note, but we all know it's a precarious environment. So you may have a valid reason for being out of the job or being away from work, but you'll be replaced because production needs to go on.
That's the thing.
Unlike in the workplace, if I put in a sick note, I can literally be away for 2 months, 3 months for particular reasons to do with mental health. But you guys can't afford that.
Yeah.
You're always in the front. So the layer that comes with being an artist.
I think what's happening is that we don't have enough policies within the industry. In fact, we don't actually have an industry yet, which says that at a specific age you're going to earn a pension, or here is a health insurance, or when you are on set, this is what is supposed to take place where you're on set, and if this does not take place, then you are not supposed to be on that set, or you are not obligated to stick to your contract. So right now what's happening is that a lot of the artists that came before me have organized in organizations like Saga and stuff like that, but that's only really just beginning. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, we don't actually know how much to rate you for a day to be on set, for a 10-hour day for acting. Do you get what I'm saying? There are no proper policies out there, or prices or regulations out there. So really what is happening is that if you don't want to do the job, they're going to get somebody who is going to be able to do the job. Do you get what I'm saying? So even your qualifications don't really count, because it's more about who's going to bring in the money, who's going to bring in the, the numbers, and then we can replace you at any point. So there's nowhere where the artist can say that, okay, there's a CCMA, we can go and talk to them. So even when sexual violence happens on set, who do you exactly go to? You can go to social media or wherever, but that's not, we don't actually have a place that can say, this is what you should not accept, and this is what you should accept, and we are going to help you in 1, 2, 3. You as an individual artist have to protect yourself. So I would have to find my own lawyers, which is money. I would have to find my own healthcare insurance. I would have to make a plan to save my own money in order for me to survive.
Do you think then this complex is what adds the layer?
Absolutely.
To, is it possible then maybe sure, this is a bit of a, because it seems like a very psychology question, and I don't know if I'm directing it correctly. But then is it possible then to say that, it increases the rate of depression in the industry?
Definitely.
Because you don't feel protected half the time?
100%. So even if you don't have people which are committing suicide, we are definitely depressed.
Yes.
Sure.
We are definitely having more sad days.
Sure.
We are definitely always anxious. Do you get what I'm saying? Because every single, you are from job to job to job. There's
and
not
you don't
that
have an
consistency.
outlet.
No
That's the
outlets.
worst part, because you must present as being perfect up front.
100%.
Whereas, like we were talking earlier about how people can tell, I'm not okay when I'm quiet. But when you're an artist, you're in character all the time. There's no really care about who and what you feel like. It's about what you bring.
Sure.
Exactly.
And also, if you are to come out about our experiences in terms of sexual violence and so forth, good luck getting your next job after that. You become
And remember,
blackballed.
they're not exactly looking for artists. They're looking for people which can bring in ratings. So if you are the type of person like a Patrick Shai, who is actually a very trained, well-experienced artist, that doesn't mean that you're going to get a job as opposed to an influencer. And that in and of itself can really depress a person. Because you know what you can bring, you know the spaces that you can go into,
You've put
but
in
you've
the
been
work.
gatekept to go there. Then when you do go into the spaces, you are not negotiating the price that is above the actual range. You're negotiating whatever they want to give you. Do you get what I'm saying? Because the industry, they'll take anybody.
And you know, for me, like, I think initially we think the influencers and so forth bring in the numbers, but I feel like the industry is not being 100% truthful about the fact that genuine true artists bring in the numbers. Because there's that thing like Skim Sam, there's no one influential there, but we still watch it, and it's one of the most highest watched things because we as people respond
there was
to
Amanda.
Yeah, but she's one of how many, you know? And also, she's not the main attraction. We don't watch Skim Sam to look at Amanda, you know? So, when you think Skim Sam also, you don't think Amanda. You think Tibos. You think, you know? So, it's not being... I think the trends are true in that it'll trend at Twitter. But Twitter is not the true reflection of South Africa. It's actually a very small reflection of our society. So even the industry is to a certain extent disingenuous about the reality because people gravitate to true artistry.
This is true. I think people underestimate the part where art is art.
Art is art.
And nobody can take that away from you. I'll always reflect on Shonda Rhimes because that's somebody who really from nothing will create. She creates a story and she builds it in such a way that it engulfs everybody who or model C or ing. She can capture everybody. She's an artist, you know, and in her craft, in her storytelling, she does it so well. And even when you go to theatre and you look at different theatre, I recently went to go watch something with the Silomake Kangube Foundation. And when I tell you that I was watching like an embodiment of like art.
Nice.
You know, I was taken aback. I had chills. You know when you have chills every 3 minutes because of wow, it was just so creative and it was so beautiful, you know. And we take away from the hype. The hype sometimes can mask true artists. I mean, Adele, at the end of her four-song little show that she had where she was wearing the black dress, I've forgotten where she was performing at one of the theaters. And then she says, you know, shout out to the real artists. You know, and I felt that, and I'm not an artist, but I felt that, you know, and she was speaking to the like anti-hype, just true artistry that's being, you know, and I hear what you're saying, it can be a rabbit hole when you're a real artist and you're just stuck in this loop, and obviously it's not the only cause. You can't take away from the fact that it's not the only cause of depression and whatever in artists. But, you know, it is definitely something that it can weigh somebody down. You know, you're trying to be a creative, but maybe you're not necessarily the most entertaining individual.
That's true.
Maybe, you know, you don't dress as nicely. You're not a branded individual.
Or you don't fit the society's prescripts of who should be. Like, you know how there's always a particular type of person in the media. You must look a particular way. You don't fit those things, but on other measures, you're amazing.
Yes.
But I think it's also important to know that what is happening in the arts industry isn't exclusive to the industry. I think the only reason that suicide seems as if it's happening a lot amongst artists is because artists are in the forefront. But in general, I feel like as a society, suicide is a big thing. I feel like unemployment is a big thing. I can tell you different industries where people go from one contract to the next contract to the next contract. So it's not exclusive to the arts, but I think the arts basically reveals what the times are. Do you get what I'm saying? Because people are out there. So what a Ricky Rick was going through is something that I can tell you that in the medical field, a lot of people are going through. Do you get what I'm saying? But we don't see that because they're not in the forefront. So art, what it's saying is, this is what is going on. Look what is going on in society, technically.
Because our eyes are on them.
Exactly. And even when it comes to artists, true artists, I'll say, which their work is not being acknowledged. I can say that for any industry. I have a friend who's in law whose work is not being acknowledged just because there are a few other people which come from a few better backgrounds and they just had a step in before she did. Do you get what I'm saying? So all of this stuff is in different industries. It's just that the arts brings it out because we are the most exposed. So if anything, we should be looking at art and saying, wow, wait, what's going on in society?
What's going on
as a
in
whole?
Society?
You know what I'm saying?
Like Bonga highlighted to say that there's never a time when an artist takes off because an artist is having tea at a coffee shop.
Yes.
And we're watching.
And we are
I
watching
don't want to
you.
lie. If I
They
saw
must be
Patrick
friendly.
Shai,
Yes.
I'd be watching.
You're
And
watching.
they must be friendly now.
Exactly.
Whether
I'm
you've
happy.
just had a fight with your wife, you've just left the house,
Yes.
your kid was like, you're
Yeah.
always fighting, mommy. Like, you just had a really
Exactly.
bad day. And as soon as you walk into a coffee shop, you meet Ursula. Ursula wants to
Exactly.
be like,
Hi, how are you?
Sani.
Yes.
And you
Yes.
always have to have this face.
And
on.
if and that was Kim Sam doesn't respond that way, we are tweeting.
We are tweeting.
I can't
Yes.
believe
Ooh.
what in that
Guys, cyberbullying. I don't even
Yes.
know where to start. I will say, even with this YouTube channel, it took me a really long time because I was just like, why would I do that to myself? If it wasn't for like giving and people just being like, come on, just start a YouTube channel.
Yeah,
But you think 3-4 times because you're like,
Yeah.
You're right.
People go through
Yeah.
so much on these pages,
Yeah.
you know.
Yes.
Cyberbullying is such a big thing, you know. And being an artist, being somebody that needs to put themselves out there all the time, how do you prepare yourself? How do you get yourself in the zone, you know?
I always think that it's important to either get mentorship or to go to school. Because there are certain things that they teach you in university to combat yourself in these situations. So they teach you how to de-roll. So once you're in a role, how to deactivate yourself from coming out of their role. They teach you how to deal with the media. They teach you how to deal with people. They teach you how to switch on and switch off. It's down to breathing techniques to teach you how to, okay, I'm in this space now, so this is how I have to be. Without completely taking yourself out of who you are. You're still yourself, but you understand that the assignment is 1, 2, 3. You know, again, it's not that exclusive in the sense that every single department has a way in which they need to act. Do you get what I'm saying? And HR needs to act a specific way, an accountant needs to act. So also in college, they teach you that as a performer who's going to be in the limelight, you have to be a certain way to your audience members. You have to be a certain way to your fans and all of that stuff. Do you get what I'm saying? That is what they teach you in that 4 years that you're going into that workspace. Do you get what I'm saying? So I think that it's important to get mentorship. I think that it's important to go to school. And I think that it's important to have honest people which are not in the arts around you, who can be like, this is a performance, stop. You know what I'm saying? You're performing now. Just be normal. Be yourself, you know? And then also remember that don't give yourself to the people in that sense. You do have boundaries. You're allowed to say, sorry, ma'am, sorry, sir, I'm having lunch with my family. I can't speak right now. You're allowed to because you're human. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to just because the people before you did that, do that. It is up to you to decide what type of artist you're going to be. Daniel Day-Lewis doesn't have interviews. He told himself at the beginning of his career, I'm not going to have interviews. And that was just that. But I think when you start becoming a prisoner of social media and interviews and all of that, that's where you get trapped up. But if you're a good
you're
artist,
signing deals and they're saying money and hey, and, you know. But if you set those boundaries from the beginning, and then I learned a term while preparing for this show, the plight of couch casting.
Yes.
And so should I take or maybe let's give it to you. Do you want to give a moment to describe what exactly is couch casting?
From what I
And
understand,
have you experienced? Yeah.
No, thank God I haven't.
Okay.
But couch casting, from what I understand, is when there is a sexual transaction that takes place in order to get a job, or rather with the hope of getting that job.
That's
because
true.
after couch casting, you don't know if you will get the job or not. Your hope is that if you do give this transaction, you will get the job. But sometimes it doesn't work that way. I don't know if couch casting is a huge thing within South Africa, but I do know that it does happen, you know.
Sure, the way I feel like South African men hate women.
No, it's absolutely a
Hannah,
huge
it
thing.
must be.
So I think it also depends on how you present yourself. You know, I think, again, going back to college, there's a certain way that they teach you to present yourself, or if you have a good mentor, that will determine whether, because for this couch casting thing, they also determine whether you're the type of person which would go in that direction. If they see a certain level of desperation, if they see a certain level of a person who's willing to go the extra mile for everything, then you could be a target. But if you get into conversations and you're the type of person who says, A, B, and C is not what I'm going to be okay with, then you combat yourself towards things like couch casting. which is also difficult and a bit elitist to say, because if you're not from a privileged background or a background which can help you out financially, then you can be a victim of things like couch casting.
It's also not just from being elitist and privileged, but it also puts the weight on women to stop the problem. And the problem is a man problem.
Absolutely.
Or a culture problem. It's not for me to say, I'm not going to be the type of girl who presents themselves as being open to that, because what is that? That's almost as saying as if you wear a short skirt, you are saying you want sexual attention. Not necessarily. Maybe I wear short skirts because I like them. Or I like how I look. Yes, exactly. So I don't, into that analysis also puts the weight on women to deal with the issue, when really it's just the practice that's wrong.
And I think it's not exclusive to women only.
Exactly.
Because couch casting
100%.
happens to especially within the LGBT community. It's a thing within the LGBT community. So it's not just subject to women. But I do think that it is important for you as an artist to know what is what. Because at the end of the day, these things that we want to change are coming few, and it's the process is very slow. So for the time being, you really need to be aware of what you need to be aware in order to protect yourself, which is an awful position to be in. But if you want to progress with some sort of safety, you're going to have to be aware of what you can and cannot do.
What you're willing and what you... I mean, I look at when Lupita Nyong'o recanted the story with Harvey Weinstein. And so she described that he had invited her for a private viewing at his home, and she went. And so, you know, creating those, because there are many things. This other colleague of mine always talk about the boys club. And he never understood it until he was like, you know, Ursh, I finally got it, because one day they're hanging in and chatting, and we're nowhere near in the arts, and they're like hanging out and chatting and talking about work, and you know, it's this, maybe we should grab a drink and we'll talk about it when we're having a drink. And then I walk towards them to join the club, and all of a sudden it's awkward because she's not coming. Because when we're ever going to go have drinks, we need to talk about girls and booties and whatever. And so I understood the part where Lupita is walking into the space, trying to create not necessarily a personal. I mean, you leverage off personal laughs and jokes for professional gain. Where does that now become? Oh, I walked to his. I took a car to his house. You know, I was deserving of being assumed that I'm that kind of girl, or you know. So I when I read the story,
I put myself in that position.
When I read the story,
almost victim blaming.
I really understood the balance that you need to strike as someone. It's Harvey Weinstein. He's inviting you to his home for a private viewing with his family. Jeez. It doesn't get better than that. But in the same breath, when the story is now being told, how quick or easy it is to then... But imagine had it been a guy. In the boys' club.
It's like a girl being invited to her opera.
Yes.
It's innocent.
You know, it's innocent. It's obvious. Geez, of course I'm going to go there.
Yes.
You know?
But it's also with like the money game. So you can be invited to a place, a producer be very nice to you, all of this stuff. And then they think that they can take away some of your money because they have wined and dined you.
Sure.
Do you get what I'm saying? So you're not being paid for the amount of money you're supposed to be paid for the work that you're doing, because they gave you a trip there, or, you know, they brought you into their home and now you guys are family and scheme. So you mustn't expect that. So in the arts, it's not just... the Harvey Weinstein issues. It's also now the regulations on like your paycheck, you know, where artists are made to feel like, oh, but I gave you exposure and I also took you there and we also drank wine. So why do you need the full amount if I've done all of this stuff for you?
Sure.
Do you get what I'm saying? So it's a very tricky place to be in, because again, as I said, there are no policies. There's nobody who you can report to. There's nobody who you can say 1, 2, 3
Line
happened.
manager, HR.
Nothing. Oh, HR. What a joke. You are your HR.
You told the story off air, and if I'm putting you on the spot, just be like, cut. But you told the story off air about how you were made to do something completely off your what you were hired for. with the cleaning of the scene before.
Yes.
And like, if you could share that story again, just an
Yeah.
example of like how, as an artist,
Just like-
how
So I was working for this television show, and it deals with renovations and things like that. And so what happens is that I come in as the presenter and the judge. That's just basically like what I'm supposed to do. But now the big thing about my position is I'm supposed to connect with the family, and I make a point of it so that when we go onto camera, you know, there's a level of like understanding that we have, and we're relaxed with each other. So in that home, the lady was like, basically the mother of the house was like, okay, well, before you guys start renovating, which by the way, everything is going to be like brought down, you guys need to first clean my house. So now the thing is that thing now is saying it's exercising your power in an incorrect way. But because also you're on a tight budget, you must make sure that this job is done today. You have to get the scenes that you need to get in today. You're going to do that because you've been put in a position where if I say no, then it means that we have to take another 3 or 4 weeks finding a family, securing it, making sure that we can have them on screen, going to the SABC and 1, 2, 3. Sure. So what are you going to do? You have to pick your battles. So as much as you don't want to be that person who gives yourself away or puts yourself in a position, you are also in the type of thing whereby you're like, livelihood, this situation. Which one am I choosing? Rent, this situation. Which one am I choosing? Do you get what I'm saying? So I always say that you're between being a victim and an activist constantly. Do you get what I'm saying? You are just there constantly trying to figure it out. And maybe industries are different. I can imagine that in America, I can definitely say that industries are different. These Harvey Weinstein things definitely happen, but they at least have policies. Do you get what I'm saying? They can run somewhere. Not that I'm saying it ever works, because you know power, when you're dealing with somebody who's powerful, it's a different ball game. But they at least have policies, and also they've got some sort of infrastructure, like in Europe, where actors are given a doll so that they can at least survive. So when those roles come and the producers are treating you some type of way, you can say, wait a minute, no, I've got some sort of financial backing. So I don't need to take this role. I can at least have that dignity. But here, it's kind of like, maybe I should, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? It takes a very strong person to say, I'm standing down.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Mouthful, you know. You're talking of the European and American standard versus the South African standard in the arts. What can South Africa do differently?
Everything. I think number one, it would be great if when it comes to like the governmental structure, we can actually get somebody who is genuinely interested in the arts as our minister. You know, somebody who is from the arts, who's interested in the arts, who understands the scape.
That's for every industry.
Do you get what I'm saying?
From,
that's why I said that it's not
science, a doctor who's
it's not
been there, who's
exclusive.
interested. Yeah.
So if we can get somebody who's genuinely interested in the arts, that would be like point number one. But I also think that within the arts, we should be more concerned about the products that we are putting up. Because if we're putting up good products, it's going to generate people watching it more, which will generate more money. And then also not making it exclusive. Theaters are exclusive. They are so pricey to the point where the person who's staying Go Soweto or Joburg CBD cannot pay for that. They would rather go to like a Sterland or like a cheaper place where they're paying 13 Rand for a movie as opposed to going to like a theater production. So making it more accessible to people.
Is this right numbers? I feel like theater is cheaper than the movies.
No, definitely not.
Guys, it's $100 for a theater performance.
It depends where you go to.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it depends where you go to.
Performances, they're cheap.
Yeah.
Kanako, you're so mind blown.
Yo, because I'm always at the theater and I pay like between 50, 150.
Yeah, I agree.
No, like proper like with I won't say proper theater productions, because theater productions can be from anywhere from 50 Rand to like 400 Rand. Do you get what I'm saying? But like in terms of like the standard rate, at Stir Kineko, you're going to be paying this amount of money every single time you go. And depending on where you are,
you can budget.
Exactly. And that there are days like Tuesdays where you're going to be paying like 20 Rand for like, So I think that making it more accessible and then putting on content that actually speaks to the people. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's one thing to put on Othello at Supatsela High, but does that speak to the person? And have you adapted it in such a way that it will speak to those people?
Sanelisiwe, thank you so much for joining us on the Conversation Capital, chatting all things today to do with being an artist in South Africa. And hopefully somebody important is listening that can make the pots to be done to really change things in the industry. Thank you so much for tuning in always. It is the Conversation Capital. Like, share, subscribe, comment, tell your friends about it. Lady Sugar Daddy, if you've got what you're saying about the Conversation Capital. Thank you so much for joining us. Catch you guys next week.